Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Logan if you've never been here before, and welcome to my holiday series. So last year I got really back into reading. Well, I guess post-pandemic I got back into reading, and I made a every book I read in 2021 video for the first time. And so now I'm gonna follow up with the 2022 version. I'm so excited. So I barely have any of the books with me, like in person, because I'm at my college apartment, so either most of them are at home or they're from the library. So I just like don't have them anymore. But yeah, also ignore the mess. I'm about to leave for a service trip in like 45 minutes, so I kept record of every book I read this year, and here we go. So my goal for 2022 was to read 10 books, which I know does not seem like a lot, but for someone who like wasn't into reading, 10 seemed like a lot, and I read 26, and that is, so 26 including books for one of my classes, and then if you don't count my class books, I read 20, and I'm in the middle of one right now, and then I'll probably read another one before the year ends, so we're looking at 20 to 22 books, which I'm very proud of. Okay, so I started off my year in January 2022 by reading It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. I remember reading this over break, and I think I read it like in a few days, but really good book. Obviously Colleen Hoover like always slays. So I took a seminar that focused on the campus novels and like magic in campus novels, and so I read a lot of books for that class. So I read Binti book 1 in February of 2022, and I also read Catherine House, which was my favorite book in the class. So good. If you've not read Catherine House, incredible. I read Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo, which was my least favorite of the books that I read in the class, but still really good. And then for the class I also read Magic for Liars by Sarah Gailey, which I loved, and Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell, which was also really good because I was like in my element. So those are the books that I read for that class in the spring semester. So in April of 2022, and I know that January to April is a big jump, but like I said, I was reading novels for class. And during school anyway, I don't like read as much as I do during the summer because school is already a lot of reading and work. So I read Firefly Lane in April of 2022, and I just recently talked about the show in my Every Show I Watched in 2022 video, but Firefly Lane is incredible. I did not know it was a show. I read the book. I was like blown away. Just like an incredible piece of, I don't even, like female friendship, like over 30 years. It's just so good. If you've not read it, I highly recommend. It's called Firefly Lane by Kristen Hanna. In May of 2022, I read Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, no other than Taylor Jenkins Reid. I remember I was reading this book, I said May of 22, but I started in late April because I was reading it in line at the Olivia Rodrigo concert, and people were like, this is the best book I've ever read. And I went home, I guess, a couple days later, and it ended up being May that I finished it, and I was like, just sitting there like taking in the end of the book because it's so good. I gave it 4 stars. I gave It Ends With Us 4 stars, Firefly Lane 4 stars. I gave Binti 3, Catherine House 4, Ninth House 2, Fangirl 4, and Magic for Liars 3. In the spring of 2022, and I put spring because usually when I'm reading self-help books, I'm reading another novel with them, so it takes me longer to read them. And I'll read like a chapter or like a section a night, and I read a book called The Rhythm of Life by Matthew Kelly, and I gave it 3 stars. Then I went through the summer I turned pretty phase again, and in May of 2022 I read It's Not Summer Without You by Jenny Han because I hadn't read the second book yet, and then I also read We'll Always Have Summer by Jenny Han in May of 22, like directly after. I put a note that I finished We'll Always Have Summer in 4 hours, and I gave It's Not Summer Without You 4 stars and We'll Always Have Summer 3 stars. In May of 2022, I read The Perfect Couple by Ellen Hilderbrand. Literally so good. I still think about that book. It basically takes place in, I think, Nantucket, which is where most of her books take place, I believe. It's like Nantucket or Nantucket-esque, and it's like a marriage wedding mystery. I was eating it up, like a wedding summer mystery. It was so good. I still think about that book. Then we're to June now, and this is where I read a butt ton of books. In June and July, it was like constant. So in June, in 4 hours, I read Cheat Sheet by Sarah Adams. I give it 4 stars. I was like, so obviously I read it in 4 hours. I read it in one sitting. It reminded me so much of like Nathan and Haley from One Tree Hill, or like Nathan and Haley, but if Lucas was Nathan. So like if they were best friends first. Oh, it was just so good. And then in June of 2022, I read Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter, and I loved all the references. I'm planning on making a video about that book, but I have to, obviously the video is a big thing, so I have to work through it. But I'm still planning to make a video about that book because I think it's so good. I give it 3 stars, and all of the references in it were just killer. And then in June of 2022, in 2 days, I read Beach Read by Emily Henry, who has made her way into my top 3 authors. So slay, Emily Henry. And then in June through July, I read this book called The Jet Setters by Amanda Air Ward, and I don't know if I just like wasn't in the mood for it or something, but I gave it only 1 star, and I don't think I finished it all the way through. Like I think I skipped around a lot. It was a really cool concept. I just personally wasn't feeling it. And then I went back into my The Summer I Turned Pretty phase. So basically over the summer, I was working at this like summer camp thing, and so like when the kids were in class, we had a lot of time to just like read books, and a lot of us would just like pass our books around. And so I had all copies of The Summer I Turned Pretty, and so we were just passing around The Summer I Turned Pretty, and I read all 3 books again, gave them all 4 stars, and then I gave It's Not Summer Without You 4.5. Oh no, I gave the first book and the second book 4.5, and then the last book ended up having 4 stars instead of 3 this read. But I read them back to back to back in July. Also in July, I read this book called Every Summer After, which I had gotten from the library by Carly Fortune. Gave it 4 stars, really good book. All of these books are like of a similar genre, and they're just like summer romance books, and I just eat them up. They're so good. In July of 2022, everyone at the summer camp was reading Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I was like, I want to read that, so I borrowed a copy, and it was really good. I like how it connected to her other books. Like I just think that's really interesting, and I gave it 3 stars. And then I arrived home in August, and I read a book called Love Rosie, or Where Rainbows End, but it's now more commonly known as Love Rosie because of the movie. It is one of my favorite movies, and I had just never gotten around to reading the book. I will say the book is really good. I did give it 3 stars, but I like the movie better. I just think the movie's better, but the book, like if you like the movie, still read the book. It's definitely worth it. In August of 2022 on the beach, I read a book called Never Saw You Coming by Erin Hahn, and I gave it 3 stars. Very good, like a perfect book to read on the beach. Cute little story. In August of 2022, in one day, I read a book called Lease on Love by Fallon Ballard. It was like a random book that I had found at the library, and I ended up really liking it. So if you're looking for an easy, quick read, Lease on Love is definitely the way to go. Then I had a little bit of a reading break because August was nuts with school starting. So in September, I read My Policeman. I got it from the library. I had to like wait a couple weeks for it. Finally got it from the library. It's by Beth Ann Robinson, if you did not know. But I did read it before seeing the movie, and I thought the movie did it justice. I thought it fit the book really well. But the book, oh, so good. I gave it 3.5 stars. It had me thinking for a while. I was like, ooh. So from September to December, I'm in the middle of a self-help book right now that I've been reading for a while. But I had been out of the reading groove since September because school's been so nuts. So I finally just finished a book called Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating. I went on a library trip like 2 weeks ago, picked up some books, and I actually have this book because I haven't returned it yet. Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating. I read this in like a few days, I think. I read the first, it took me a while to read like the first 100 pages, and then I did the rest of the book in one sitting. So I also did not know that Christina Lauren was 2 people. So slay Christina Lauren. I went to the library because I wanted to get Love in Other Words and they didn't have it, but they had this book and this book was really good. So I highly recommend if you're into romance tropes. Literally, if you're into romance tropes, any of these books, honestly. I don't remember where I was because I just pulled my bookmark out because I'm dumb. But I'm in the middle of reading The Great Gatsby, as well as a self-help book. So I don't know if I'll finish these before the end of the year, but I'm sure I will. So, but yeah, those are all the books that I read in 2022, minus a few that I will likely finish. But I met my goal, which is very exciting, and we will see what my goal is for next year. I think I'm gonna make it 20 books because I read 20 easily this year. So yeah, thank you for watching. I'm sorry if I sped through that.